A board will hold you accountable to what you say is important and how you want to grow your business. And there is evidence to support that having independent board members in a family business or a business family will produce as much as twice the profit increase.
Welcome to the Family Business 360 podcast. I'm Roger Anderson, Program Manager at the Austin Family Business Program at Oregon State University, and your host. On today's episode, I welcome Paul Menig of TechIM Business Accelerants to talk about advisory boards in family business. This is based on the Family Business 360 breakfast we conducted in Tigard on December 7th, 2017, titled, Don't Grow It Alone, How Advisory Boards Drive Success. Paul Menig is focused on driving businesses to achieve faster, profitable growth, getting them more money from business and more time for life. TechIM was formed in January 2012 when Paul escaped the corporate world where he led teams to create, develop, and support high-tech products for military, aerospace, industrial automation, medical, and automotive industries. He conducted this work as an intrapreneur at Daimler, Eaton, and General Electric. In those roles, he worked with family and multinational public corporations around the world. Paul is a governance fellow at the National Association of Corporate Directors, president of the board for the National Transportation Center Foundation, and treasurer for the board of Qualnetics. Paul is also very active as a business mentor doing pro bono consulting through the SCORE organization. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Paul Menig of TechIM about advisory boards and family business. So I am here with Paul Menig with TechIM Business Accelerants, and we just did a great session on advisory boards, which was titled, Don't Grow It Alone, How Advisory Boards Drive Success. So Paul, thanks for sitting down and chatting.
Glad to be here, Roger. It was a great session, meeting all the different business families. I say it that way because is it business first or family first? Many businesses I run into, they have multiple different businesses in different industries underneath them. And so they're a family, but they're also businesses. And so it makes a difference as to what kind of advice and support you're going to need if you are a business first or a family first.
So probably the logical first step here, just so we can baseline our conversation, pick up some of the highlights. This is a very big topic. Ton of information in your presentation, but for today's podcast, we're going to kind of do a greatest hits, or the basics at least. So the first thing we absolutely probably should do is talk to the title, at least the word in the title, advisory boards. If you could give us a definition of what you envision that as meaning, and you had a great slide that was kind of the range of options, if you were growing it alone or just starting out or small operation all the way up to very sophisticated. So maybe talk to that, and that'll frame us up.
What I've seen with different businesses is that they start out with just a single individual, or maybe a husband-wife team or two brothers starting a business. So I consider that as a grow it alone. But very quickly you run out of being able to do that because you may need a CPA, you may need a lawyer, you may need somebody to help with putting up a website, you need somebody for business cards. So growing it alone really is a misnomer. You can take advantage of free resources. Mercy Corps is out there. Many startups take advantage of free mentoring resources through OEN and TIE and TAO and all kinds of startups and things like that. You can get a SCORE mentor. You can get somebody from a college course who has to do some work. Then you can step up from there to municipality, state, or government-supported things like Oregon Manufacturing Extension Partnership. You may be a part of a trade association who provides educational classes on the business and opportunities even for sharing of information. You can hire independent consultants to do things specifically for your web, for sales and marketing, for supply chain, for HR, whatever it may be. A number of businesses I've worked with are part of a peer advisory group, Vistage, C12, Renaissance, and there are others that are out there. A group of 12 to 16 individuals that meet monthly at the CEO level and discuss things that are important to their businesses. Sometimes it's family stuff, sometimes it is purely business stuff. Then the next level up from that, I think, is a board of advisors that you're paying. You pay to be part of that CEO advisory group, But as a board of advisors, now you get to select who you're going to have on there. So if you really need a concentration in HR, if you really need a concentration in process development, if you really need somebody on sales and marketing, you can choose the group of advisors you're going to have. It can be 2 or 3, or some data suggests, many people have 5 and 6 people on their board of advisors. It can be a standing committee. It can be a one-time kind of event of a strategy session over 3 days. And then the final step is to get to a truly independent board of directors where you as the owner or CEO could actually be outvoted by some of the other directors. That's rare in a family business.
And it just occurred to me now, thinking back to your slide where you had a line graph, right, on the left-hand side, or not a line graph, but like a plot. On the left-hand side was Don't Grow It Alone. On the far right was the independent board, and you had all these laid out in between. It seems like an evolution between I, as a family business, am seeking outside resources that have ready-made solutions, and then as you get more complicated and evolve, you're actually building those resources yourself and turning them to more of an internal resource, right? I mean, you're looking inward then when you're building your boards, in a way.
It's interesting. I like science fiction. I'm thinking it's kind of like the Borg in Star Trek. You're bringing them in and making them part of the family instead of them all being independent people. And that's important because they need to understand your entire business, just like that Borg needs to, gets access to everything about the Borg. And it has to have the same values. And we see, with Jean-Luc Picard and the Borg, their values are very different, and so they don't work together. And so, Picard gets separated.
Right. So an independent board of directors is the most sophisticated. I'm just using that term because it's on the far right. They have to interact and understand and work with your business on a level that an OMEP, or I'm not taking anything away from those, but they're never going to get to that point with your business. Like an independent director will understand your business.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so that kind of gives us an idea of what we're talking about. And the crowd in here, I would say you did a poll at the beginning. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would say they were a reasonably sophisticated group when it comes to governance structures. Sounded like a lot of them had family councils, or what they termed family councils. A lot had some sort of a quote-unquote board or advisory group, so I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it was somewhere between 30% and 60% that had each one of those types of vehicles for governance of their family business.
Let's take a different tact a little bit here. Let's suppose, let's say I'm a second-generation family business. Let's just say I'm $10 million in sales. I'm not gigantic. I'm not small. Maybe I've got a handful of family members, and I don't have a board governance structure. Talk a little bit about, what are initial steps? If I'm considering this, why would I do it? Why should I do it? And if I decide that I want to, what are some initial things I should be thinking about or doing to prep?
The why often comes down to there is a transition in leadership coming, as you just suggested. Maybe there's a big investment that has to be made. Maybe there's a family member that needs a liquidity investment in order to get out of the business. Those are some of the reasons that you're going to do it at that particular point in time. The why generally is you should end up making more money and being able to grow the business better. If you bring in other people who have contacts within the industry and can make introductions for you and bring in new business, that's the very essence of family businesses, somebody talking to somebody, shaking a hand, and new business being created. On the other hand, bringing in other people can help you with understanding your expenses better and where to go to actually ferret out some problems. I talked with a business earlier this week, and one quick look at their financial statements, and they're talking with me, and you ask them, well, where is this expense that you just told me about? They grab the sheet and I don't know. We'll have to go answer that kind of a question.
You made an interesting point in the presentation too, and I don't have your exact quote, but it was basically to the effect of, when you were talking about coaching and teaching and teachers and mentors and things like that these people can see things that you can't see. And it also occurs to me, in a family business setting, they can tell you things that other family members can't as well, right? Isn't that another dynamic of a board? Or even to take it a step further, a board can help you evaluate family members in a way that a father can't evaluate his own son as a business owner. for example?
Absolutely. You have to have some level of objectivity. We're all biased. We all have some different things. We overlook things that become obvious. If somebody comes into my house and they might very quickly see, well, why do you have that there? It's in your way. Oh, it never occurred to me to move that. I've become much of a golfer. That's why I used a few examples from golf. And we think of golf as this individual sport, but there's a whole lot of people that are watching you in doing things. I was on a simulator recently, and looking at the very slight angle changes in how you hit the ball makes a huge difference in the business. And you just might not even know to look in that. You might not have the business background to suggest it. You might not have the statistical information that you need, and somebody from outside the business can just, like a laser pointer, just go right in there and find, okay, here is a problem. Now, since we're talking about boards rather than individual consultants, that's where I think it's important to, you've identified that issue. Now, how big is that issue? How important is that issue? Is it urgent, an issue to deal with right now, or are there other things that you need to deal with?
Now, it's one thing to find an accountant or an attorney. I mean, that's low-hanging fruit, right? Those folks are easy to find, and it's relatively easy to find good matches. Where in the world do people go to find good advisory board members?
What most people do is they start out with somebody that they know and trust, that knows something in at least an area of the business that they want to be involved. Now, that might be a lawyer, that might be an accountant, but oftentimes the CPA knows the numbers but doesn't understand inventory other than it's a cost. They don't understand the flow of inventory. They don't understand sales. So a lot of people will look to finding somebody who has been a CEO in some other business. Maybe it's related. So somebody in trucking will often say go to somebody in aerospace. Similar types of parts, similar types of issues, different volumes, but maybe some of the HR issues, some of the supply issues, suppliers even may be the same along the way. There are a lot of people who stop being a CEO or a COO and are still interested in doing a little bit of work. And they're an excellent source of somebody to come in and help you with your business. You can go down the path of actually creating a position description and advertising for one, either publicly or confidentially. You can do a search through a specialized executive search firm such as Korn Ferry. The National Association of Corporate Directors will help with finding a director for your business. And there are a couple of websites that are the new equivalent of the white pages and yellow pages, where you can go, and they're intended to be a social media website where people who are looking for board positions and people who need board positions can meet up, if you will. And
it occurs to me, too, you mentioned CEO peer advisory groups. If you're involved in one of those, is that a place to use your network to find potential board members?
You may find that one of those members of your peer group would be interested. Maybe they know of somebody that would be interested. Anybody who's a trusted advisor, you can certainly reach out to and ask, hey, I'm looking for such and such. Do you know somebody I might talk to? The challenge is deciding who you actually want to bring on. Do they fit with your company? Will you continue to respect their advice, especially if they tell you, no, you're not making the right decision, in my opinion.
So I found a couple of candidates, let's say, and my next question, if it hasn't already been asked, if I haven't already come across this or thought about this, is how much is this going to cost me? Because you had a couple of interesting slides, and you actually have a kind of a matrix where you laid out different sorts of advisory resources or governance resources and commitment levels, control levels, preparation levels, and cost levels. All important things to consider. But I think question number one on a lot of people's minds is, can I afford? I'm not General Electric. I can't pay a board member $100,000 a year. What can I reasonably expect?
So the low end, you can have just a couple of meetings and spend $10,000 to $20,000, $30,000 a year for a board of advisors to help you. That could be done by video web conferencing. If it's done in person, you're typically expected to pay the expenses for travel associated with that. So if you're bringing somebody to the West Coast from the East Coast, that can get quite expensive. If it's somebody local, it's a little bit less, but still there's some expenses associated there. If you're a much larger company, say in the $150, $250 million level, you're probably talking something more like $30,000 to $50,000 that you're going to be paying for a board member advisor in that level. So it's a range. And for many companies, start small. Start with just 1 or 2 meetings a year that lasts maybe a half a day or a day kind of thing. And you should be able to do it have several members and do it for under $20,000.
And what if I want a board that has family members on it? How does that work exactly, in your opinion? If I want maybe a couple of independent directors and a couple of family members on the board, does that work?
Absolutely. If in any large public corporation, you're going to typically see the CEO and maybe one or more of the people that report to him will be on his board at the same time. So you got this interesting relationship that he reports to you over here in the business, but on the board he's a peer and his vote counts the same as your board vote counts. So that happens all the time. There's no reason that, a family member with the right skills, can't be a board member. And I see it all the time that, it may be a family board member that's the president of the company, but he's still not on the board. And then at some point in time, after maybe 5 years, the confidence has grown, the expectation has grown, and he gets voted onto the board.
Do you see board service as a way to develop the next generation of family? Or do you think the talents and the skills and the experience of the next generation needs to be fairly well developed before they sit on the family's board? Because I've seen families in business that run the gamut. They have the next generation is on the board right away, all the way up to what you described. So they've got to get some experience first. Well,
it could depend on how you structure the voting and the different voting shares and stuff. So you could have people attending and voting, but their shares aren't large enough for them to actually, make a big difference in the vote. Coming from the corporate world, what we would typically do is you had to prove yourself before you got elevated to that kind of a position on an operating committee, which to me is like a family board. When you got a $50 million business and you're on the operating committee and making decisions for the company, it's somewhat similar. So what we would do is, you have somebody, be in charge of sales and marketing for a while. And, even if he's not a sales and marketing person, he better learn what's important in there and how to deal with people, because that's going to be important to him no matter what he does. Put him in charge of government relations for a while. Put him in charge of the supply chain for a while. And get them that broad experience. Have them attend board meetings, make presentations to board meetings, be challenged by the board before they get elevated to the board.
Okay, Paul, so let's talk about values for a second. Family values, or values as a family in business, because that's a big issue for a lot of families, right? Especially generational transfers. They don't just want the assets and the wealth of the family and the business to transfer. They want values to go to the next generation as well. So how do your values as a family in business impact your board member makeup? And are there ways that having a board in place can help you perpetuate those values?
I find values are important all over the place, and it's obviously been in the news a lot lately. People lying, cheating, touching, doing all kinds of things that are not part of the value of that business. And values are both a family-oriented thing, like, for me, we often said, a MENIG stands for this. If you're a MENIG, this is what's expected of you. And yet, we're all individuals, and my daughter is very different. My son is very different. And they do have some separate values from the family values that are going to drive them to make decisions. Now, if that's true in the family, if you bring in an independent board person, they're coming in with their own personal values, their own experience of values, their own family values. Is it going to mesh with yours? So you need to find a way to really understand what your values are and what their values are. And, on a personality basis, is there going to be a fit for what you're looking for? You don't want yes men, and you also don't want no men. You want people that are going to tell you the truth objectively.
So we've kind of talked a bit about what a board is. We've talked about, what the range of options are, right? Where you can go to find advisors, whether they're informal or formal, how much you can expect to pay, and a little bit, I guess, about what the function of a board is in a family business. And there's a lot more we could talk about. But if you had to elevator pitch me right now, what's your best simple argument for why a family in business who are at that stage, can financially handle it, should get a board together?
A board will hold you accountable to what you say is important and how you want to grow your business. And there is evidence to support that having independent board members in a family business or a business family will produce as much as twice the profit increase.
Okay, Paul, fantastic. Thank you very much. And I hope to talk to you again soon.
Okay, great. Thanks, Roger.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Paul Menig of Tech IM Business Accelerants. If you'd like to contact Paul, you can find him online at www.tech-i-m.com, or you can reach his office at 971-222-5683. If you'd like to learn more about the Austin Family Business Program, you can find us online at business.oregonstate.edu/Family Business Online. Thank you once again for downloading this episode of the Family Business 360 podcast. Until next time, I'm Roger Anderson, Program Manager at the Austin Family Business Program. Thank you for listening.